right, this is John Kohler with Growing Your Greens, and I'm answering some questions for an interview. How can I make the raw vegan diet better? As good as it is, as good as it's claimed to be, growing food changed my life, So, here's the thing. That is a big rabbit hole. When I eat the food I grow, I'm like, I feel good about myself. The most important tropical fruit trees to plant are... This is game changing.
Hello, John. Thank you for joining me. Your garden is truly inspiring. Please share why you grow your greens.
I grow copious amounts of greens. Yes, I have some fruit trees too and love eating fruit. But here's the thing, guys. I started growing my greens and other food at my home after about 10 years of eating a raw vegan diet. I've always kind of grown in the periphery, but after about 10 years, I literally took out my front yard of a residential house to grow food, to grow more of my own food. I thought that even after being on a raw vegan diet, which is, said to be one of the best diets on the planet, which I would, agree that most people should eat a lot of raw foods and we should minimally process our foods. I believe that you could take it to the next level because most of you guys eating a raw food diet are simply just going to the grocery store and buying food. And that food, my personal opinion, is very low quality. This is also backed up by the published studies. Always trying to improve what I'm doing in my life. And if I'm eating a raw vegan diet, I'm like, hey, how can I make the raw vegan diet better? As good as it is, as good as it's claimed to be, how can I make it better? How can I take it to my next level? How can I put my spin on it and do what I think would be best, right? And I thought that, hey, if you grow your own food, not only can you add the nutrients to the soil to have more nutritious food, not only will it taste better, more sweet, more delicious, react upon your taste buds and have you fire all your cylinders in your taste buds. I could pick these and eat them fresh, so I have a much more vibrant food. A vibrancy of food that money can't buy. Whether I'm picking my figs fresh off my trees and eating them, the life force energy in the food, the nutrition in the food, and just the sweetness is amazing. And not to even mention that, when I eat the food I grow, I'm like, I feel good about myself because I've done good on the planet. I've reduced my carbon footprint. Most food has to get shipped around the world. All the food you guys see here in my garden, I use locally. I give some to friends in the local area. I'll freeze dry some to have for later. But there's minimal transportation, but more importantly for me, it is about the freshness. I think the really last reason why I grow my greens that is so important to me is because I can grow foods that literally money cannot buy. It's extremely rare to find good quality tropical vegetables like I grow here in the summer in Las Vegas, where we have hit 120 this year. In my city, there's no way you're ever gonna find this fresh, no way. And what this is called Hwang Ngok. And this is an amazing, delicate leafy green. Now, yes, this would want to grow in the tropics, and yes, it will only grow in the summertime here. But I hopefully take cuttings from it and root it and then transport it to my property in Puerto Rico, where I can grow this rare crop year-round. It has a really mild flavor. And this is just one of many crops that I grow that literally you can't go to Whole Foods and buy some of the things I grow. And then just have mass abundance. And if you could find some of these rare things, which is you can't, it would cost a lot of money. So that's another very important reason, because what I want people to understand is that every different plant has different phytochemicals or phytonutrients. These are compounds that the DNA in these plants make to protect itself from the weather, the sun, the heat, the bugs, the elements. And when we eat these properties of the plants, we get them into us, and they can confer health benefits upon us based on so many different scientific studies that I've reviewed. And I never fail to be amazed by the power of different plants and how amazing they are. Let's not even mention the taste sensations that I could grow in my garden. So to sum it up, I'm growing my greens, number one, to have higher quality food that is more nutritious, that money can't buy, that is fresher, that doesn't have as much of a carbon footprint, that is unique and literally you can't find in grocery stores with unique phytochemicals.
Sounds amazing. And how did growing your own food change your life?
It has definitely changed my life. It has gotten me more connected with nature. That's the very most important thing. So being connected with nature is very important to me, and it really, made me appreciate nature more, especially the birds and the bees that you may hear and see, pollinating some of my plants. I've gotten like mason bee boxes. So the bees, they're solitary bees that help pollinate without making any honey. That their populations are being lost actually, so I'm glad I'm providing habitat and food and forage for them. Also understanding like what it takes to grow food, and especially this is important if you're a vegan. So if you're a vegan and you're growing lettuce and then slugs eat your lettuce, right? Then you're not eating, Then what? You're gonna go to the grocery store and buy lettuce that the farmer grew that then they probably use some kind of, slug killer. So when slugs attack your garden, are you now going to pick off every slug and then take them and rehome them to the local park, which may be considered illegal? Or are you going to use a slug bait, or are you going to get chickens to deal with it? Because, nature is not forgiving, right? Nature's nature. It's just there. Things are going to happen. And it really kind of made me appreciate what goes into growing my own food as sustainably as possible, using the minimal amount of sprays, doing the least destruction damage to other creatures on the planet, I think really a connection with nature, a connection with creatures on the planet, a connection with the food soil web and how the food soil web works. I had to learn so many things, which was really good because it causes brain plasticity and causes you to think about things a little bit more. In addition, it changed my life actually, because every day I'm now in my garden, working my land. I have to observe the plants and see if they need something, see if I could do something less. I think right now maybe over-watering by a bit, so I want to cut back my watering a little bit. But you have to take care of your garden, right? Depending on where you live and what plants you're growing. Some may need more care than others, and it's like having a pet, right? It's a responsibility that I have, because if I want to eat high-quality food, I need to foster my plant growth, and then I allow many of them to go to flower and set seed and then just distribute in my garden so they could come up next year and let them reproduce, because that's really all they want to do. So growing food has also changed my life because it made me think differently about the foods that I'm eating. Very important. So my goal, instead of looking at a recipe and then deciding what I'm going to make and going to the store and buying those ingredients, I walk my garden, see what my garden is producing, and then I have to basically, what can I make with all these different foods? So for example, yesterday I harvested okra and peppers, eggplant, and just tons of different leafy greens and herbs, chopped them all up, and then I juiced 5 pounds of peppers, 5 pounds of tomatoes, made a juice, and turned that into a soup, a montage of soup with everything that is growing, that is ripe and available in my garden. So I think that's a really fundamental change, is paying more attention and walking my garden, being more connected with nature, eating based on what's in season, what I have to harvest. And I think this is game changing.
What tropical greens do you recommend to grow?
I recommend just growing a variety of tropical greens. And, me personally, I love the tropical greens that are less maintenance. So the ones that you could plant once, just like this. The water spinach you plant once and it'll just keep growing. Of course, some of my favorite tropical greens are tropical greens that grow on trees. Some of these things are vines, and some vines could be long-lived. But of course, I really love the trees the most, because once you got a tree in there, man, it's just growing. So the moringa, also the bele or salad tree. It's a Hibiscus manuhat, another amazing tree that'll grow. The chaya does need to be cooked to be eaten, but I just think of, hey, what can I grow here? And to me, it's a lot about experimentation. The water spinach, it's called water spinach because it loves to grow in water. It would probably thrive in the wet season. So, I think that some plants will go dormant in the dry season. Maybe during the wet season, they produce seed and drop the seed, and then the dry season comes, then that's their hiatus. And then the wet season comes, and then the seeds get germinated when they get rained on, and they grow some more. So I mean, this is like the natural system of things. Once again, that I would consider perennial are things like the Malabar spinach, things like the jewels of au pair. There's one called Katuk that is probably one of my favorite. It has like a nice peanutty flavor. The longevity spinach, the Okinawan spinach. Don't forget about things like basil. There's more mild kinds of basil. Basil to me is a leafy green. I wouldn't necessarily make a salad out of it, but I do like to add a good percentage of basil to my salads because it is something that grows really easily, especially in the warm season. It made it through the warm season in Puerto Rico. I planted the holy basil actually, and without any watering in the dry season, man, just planted it kind of like underneath the banana tree with good mulch. Totally lasted 6 months without any intervention on my part. Another one very close, really related to the basil is the shiso, which I love as well. The Breton shiso seems to be the most prolific in my garden. They just drop seeds and they come back every year with a vengeance. Longevity spinach right here. Egyptian spinach. And these are the leaves known as malahia. One kind. These are little seed pods right there. They look like little okras, and then when they're young like this, you could just pick them off and eat them. False roselle. It's a type of hibiscus. It's kind of like a sour. And then we have the standard roselle. This is the regular roselle. Of course, I mean, another thing I think would probably do good is a purslane. That's just all the purslane. The Malabar spinach loves to climb. It goes up and up and up. So this is all the go-to cola, nice ground cover. It could totally take over a whole space and area and be a ground cover. Centella asiatica or pennywort. Turmeric leaves, tender young baby leaves for eating, like when they're super small and tiny. Chamola, it's like an African kale. Dinosaur kale that always performs well. Tree collards, another one of my favorite perennial. I don't even know the name of this one, which is like a crazy ass weed vine. But that thing just grows like crazy. I have so much of it.
What is the most important thing you learned in your garden?
I think the most important thing I've learned in my garden is to observe nature, because really that's how we're gonna grow and learn the most, right? You could learn a lot from nature. Just sitting here, like one of my favorite things to do is come out in the morning, drink my green juice, eat my fruit outside in my garden, and just observe nature. See the birds, see the bees, see the dragonflies. Hopefully I could spot like, newts. I released a newt over here. His name is Gingrich. And then also I have, praying mantises and observing them and seeing how nature works. And I think this is really the most important thing that my garden has taught me. And then you observe and then you basically duplicate the pattern. So you see what happens, you observe nature, and then you can modify your approach to work more in tune with nature. Nature rules over us, and we need to observe nature and see what we can glean and learn from it. Very important lesson. To me, observing nature is fun, and then trying to decipher it and see why it's doing what it's doing. I think that's one of my many joys of life these days.
It sounds beautiful. And how do you use your limited space to grow more greens?
There's several factors that play into this. Number one is you want to choose the appropriate plants that are going to produce more in less space. One of my goals is to grow food that is conducive to small spaces. So you guys can see here, what you guys are seeing here, you're seeing literally a wall of purple or lilac sweet potato vine. The lilac sweet potato vine, right, all these would actually vine out and sprawl over a large area, take a large footprint. I don't have a large area. What I did was I basically put up a nylon string trellis, and this is against my house. And then I basically use these little clips to clip up the sweet potatoes to the string trellis up the house. So I'm growing vertically. This is a very important technique to grow the most food, because yes, food can cover the ground, but I'm growing food vertically. And I basically put these just 15-gallon pots that are growing the sweet potatoes. I put like 6 slips in each pot, or 5 or 6 in each pot, and then I grow all these vertically. Every single one of these leaves, guys, are edible. This is the Ipomea batis, whereas the water spinach I showed you guys earlier is the Ipomea aquatica. So they're closely related. All these leaves can be eaten raw or steamed. Actually, I prefer eating the water spinach raw, but actually on the sweet potato leaves, I prefer to eat them steamed, although of course these went in raw into my soup that I made just last night. The other thing is I try to maximize my space. So while sometimes they say you can grow something really tall and then you can grow smaller things below it, I don't tend to do that a lot here because I just want to fill in every spot and get things packed in and then start them to grow vertical. I mean, that's probably my main technique, but of course you can grow things lower to the ground, roots underneath the ground. Actually, this is a good example too. The sweet potatoes are growing roots under the ground, so that's a food in the pots I could eat. And of course, all the greens I could eat as well. The sweet potatoes will be harvested in just about 2 months when they get a lot larger before the first frost.
You bought a property in tropical Puerto Rico. Why did you choose this climate and what are your plans there?
I love the tropics. I am not a fan of cold weather. I love warm weather. I mean, we are warm-blooded. We love warm weather, and I don't think people should really live in super cold climates. That being said, the reason why I bought in the tropics is because I could grow lots of tropical fruits, and more importantly, I can grow year-round and perennial tropical vegetables. Of course, many of these tropical vegetables I am also growing in my garden here in Las Vegas, only during the warm season, because once it gets cold, they don't make it. But the cool thing is I could take these very plants down to Puerto Rico and then grow them year-round, and it'll be like really easy gardening because you plant them once, take care of them, they'll continue to make you food every single day without you having to replant them. So my real goal with the tropical land is actually I'm going to be growing tons of food there. So I'm going to basically build it out permaculture style, so it's more self-sustaining. So when it rains, the water is caught in the swales, in the landscape, and then waters the tropical plants that will grow year-round without me. So literally have a tropical food forest with fruits and vegetables. I also want to be able to share the love of the tropics and tropical fruits with others so they could taste the flavor of the tropics. It's very important for me to really, educate people about these things because most people have no clue, and I want everybody to take their diet, their health, their connection with nature to the next level.
And what is your favorite fruit? Please choose just one.
Please choose one. So, here's the thing, like there's so many different fruits, and I don't like to say this is my favorite one. I like to say that, the fruit that I have ripe, so like last week my favorite fruit was figs when I'm picking them fresh off my tree, and they're super ripe, super delicious, And if I'm in the tropics and my friend's dropping mangoes from his tree, and even though they're kind of like the sappy kind and not a named variety, they're delicious to me because they're super fresh and right off his trees. And I know it said choose one, so if I had to choose one aside from the fruit that, is ripe in front of me in season, because that's very important, right? I particularly care for jackfruit. I mean, that is still one of my favorite crops. Whether I'm going to eat the fruit whole, I love the experience of opening it up, popping out the fruit, sitting with friends, eating jackfruit. I love the flavor. I love the more, not super crunchy, but the more crunchy than the the gooey kind. And of course, then you can plant the seeds, which we've done a lot on our properties, but also I like to steam the seeds, and you could eat the steamed seeds. They taste like steamed chestnuts.
How do you like durian?
Durian's all right. I prefer jackfruit. Some people love durian and go crazy. And yes, I did plant a durian tree on my property. That was one of the first fruit trees I did plant. So if that tells you anything about durian, that I do, yes, want to have them on my property. I do enjoy them. The good durian's pretty good. I've had fresh durians in Hawaii. I've getting imported fresh durians here. Actually, it was on sale at the store. I was contemplating buying them. They're like $10 a pound in the shell, in the husk, not frozen. The fact of the matter is that it's hard to get good durian in the States. The best place I found actually is to get frozen durian. Actually, I think I'm going to thaw some out today when I have my durian trees producing in Puerto Rico and I have fresh durian and better varieties. Maybe I'm going to love them more. Because like if you just say, do you like apples, and like you're eating like Red Delicious, I mean, they blow, they suck. But if you eat some pink pearls, which I just got at the farmer's market, I mean, to me, those are completely amazing.
In your opinion, what are the 5 most important tropical fruit trees to plant?
I think that some of the most important tropical fruit trees to plant are fruit trees that produce year round instead of once a year or twice a year, right? So I think, one of the most important staple crops of many cultures in the tropics is the breadfruit. Luckily, I already have a breadfruit, tree on my property, and it's actually sprouting up more from the roots in different areas, which is amazing. And breadfruit, we should not underestimate breadfruit. Yes, breadfruit could be eaten raw. There are certain varieties that taste better raw than not. That being said, breadfruit is often cooked and eaten as a starch type crop, which is amazing. And, it basically produces so much. So, I think that's like number one. Number two, of course, related to breadfruit is the jackfruit. Also related things like champadak, which also is an amazing food. I really love the jackfruit because I like to personally eat it ripe, but I know there's vegans out there that like to harvest it unripe and make vegan meat substitutes out of it, as well as the seeds being edible. I believe the jackfruit, aside from being one of my favorite fruits to eat, actually is an amazing tree, can produce relatively quickly. Number three, another tropical fruit that should be grown, of course, and really it's a drupe, not a fruit, but we call it a fruit, is the coconut. The coconut palm, another amazing plant. You could harvest the palm, which I wouldn't do for a heart of palm. You can actually let it grow. You can cut the main growth as it's coming out and get a fruit, and you could collect the sap and make different fermented beverages with it. You could also harvest the young coconuts for water, nature's best purified water in the tropics. You could harvest it when it's more mature for the jelly meat and the water. You can let them get really mature and harvest it for the mature meat, make things like coconut oil, coconut shreds out of it. You could harvest it once it's fully mature, drops, and then sprouts and have, queen's candy, which is what it's called in Hawaii, or coconut sprout. Grow another coconut palm. Coconut is completely amazing. Hopefully this next trip I'm going to be planting lots of dwarf coconuts so they're much easier to harvest. Another fruit tree I actually planted, so this tells me that it's actually quite important because it was one of the first ones that I planted on my property in Puerto Rico when I could plant pretty much anything I want. And I chose these two specifically. They're kind of the same, but they're kind of different. They're basically leguminous fruits, right? Leguminous fruit trees will basically put nitrogen back in the soil, feed the soil, but also provide us with food. So the first one, the one that I like a little bit more, is known as like the tropical carob, or also known as stinky toe fruit. So that's a funny name. You guys got to look it up. Most of you guys won't know what this is, but I like it because it actually fixes nitrogen. Number one. Number two, it creates a very hard wood. So it is a slow grower. These trees could get massive, giant. They take a long time to grow, but the wood is very valued for construction purposes. That being said, it's going to take a while to grow it. But number three, it produces a fruit that is actually quite rare. I can only surmise that it is actually rich in microbiome feeding fiber. And the other thing that's very important for me on this fruit is the shell is so hard because it is a leguminous fruit. It is a good storage crop. That's very important, especially living in a place where there's likely hurricanes. This tree has deep roots, has hard wood, unlikely to get blown over in a hurricane, and also has a good storage food. Like, it literally will dry itself inside the pod. When you open the pod, when they're completely dry, it'll be like this nice powder, like you bought some kind of like powder from some superfood shop, and then you taste it and it's like amazing. Like, I love this stuff even more than regular carob pods or carob powder. And so I think that's really amazing. Now, at the same token, another plant, and we're not going to count this as the 5 because it's kind of also a leguminous plant, is the Inca bean. I planted the Inca bean, or ice cream bean. I love that plant because it's a fast growing tree. Once again, it sends down nutrients to the soil and it produces a nice cotton candy like fluffy sweet like bean or fruit you can eat. So the last fruit tree, I believe, and some people may argue with me that, John, that's not a fruit tree, but I'm going to say it is a fruit tree because, once again, it's a plant that produces fruits that, in some cultures they eat, They're known as drumsticks. Also produces edible seeds as well as year-round edible leaves and flowers when they are flowering. This is the moringa tree. The moringa tree, I think, a very important tree. You know, you might say, oh, that's not a fruit tree, but, you know, to me, you know, if it produces something we could eat, and yeah, I think you need to usually cook the drumsticks before you eat them. I think I've eaten them when they're really young and tender and, you know, small. It's not a sweet fruit by any means, but the moringa tree is one amazing tree. It has a deep taproot, pulls up nutrients from the soil, makes very nutritious leaves. I think that's the final one I would say. I mean, I know there's tons of other fruits, but, you know, I really look to fruits that have multiple uses. I might say another one might be like something like noni. And like, oh, John, noni, they taste horrible. But like, to me, the noni plant is amazing. I mean, there are benefits of growing the leaves because you could eat the leaves. I've been eating the baby leaves raw in salads and blended salads last time I was in Puerto Rico. The fruit, of course, is very medicinal. You can dehydrate the fruit to make fruit leather. You know, if you don't have a freeze dryer, which would be best to freeze dry it. It's a very powerful plant. So not only could you use the fruit, but you can also eat the leaves edible raw, or you could dry the leaves and make tea. Actually, the fun thing is, last time I was in Puerto Rico, I cut myself, and I basically took some of the noni leaves, chewed them up, and then I just put that as a poultice on my cut, and then the bleeding stopped, right? It's also known to rejuvenate your skin, you know, so I think that's a very valuable plant, and I'm lucky already to have that growing on my property in Puerto Rico. All right, so hope this answers all your questions, and I hope you guys start growing some more greens and eating them. They are so important for health.